My early upbringing was in a small tobacco farm called Toddville, South Carolina. Unfortunately, the first 2 years I didn't see my mom because she had mental issues. And I was raised by my aunt who was on a farm who was very busy running a farm. She had no time to touch it, much less feed you. So you were on your own. My father was a racist. He was a Ku Klux Klan member. When he drank, he became very violent. He picked up on the femininity I had, and I began receiving mad attacks around that particular issue. The relationship between my mother and my father became more violent to the extent that guns were involved with it. And when it escalated to that point repeatedly, I went to the school and told the woman that I worked with in the dish room, she was a large Black woman, she told me, I want you to take this card and give it to your mom and tell her to call that number. So I did. And it turned out that that number that that lady gave me was actually a lifeline because it was the Department of Social Services who immediately intervened and placed us from where we lived with my father while he was away on a job into a local low-income project. And then I grew up there in my teenage years. It was like a miracle that that happened because it was a lifeline. It started me and my mom on a new path. There was one particular young man, and his name was Sweet Pea. My mother went outside and she drew a line in the sidewalk and she told me, don't you cross that line. And one day, little Sweet Pea came up to the line in the grass and said to me, I dare you to cross that line. And I crossed it. And I went with him. And he was with a gang of other young men. And we would go down to the railroad track, hop the train, ride it into the swamp near the Cape Fear River. And they were building this plank made up bridge out of woods that they found to get to the river. And they caught fish and cooked the fish and we ate dinner. And then we all laid down. And I noticed something different, that when they laid down, one elbow would lean on the other and one leg would lean across another, which I had not seen with white boys. And I thought, now isn't that curious? And then Sweet Pea pulled my head to his belly and I could feel his heart beating in that belly. And he said to me, you sure is beautiful. And I said, no, I'm not. He said, no, you're beautiful. And I said, wow, maybe I am beautiful. Eventually, the contrast with my mom got more intense because she was telling me all of the filthy things that you can say about people of color that I knew was a lie. And I said, I'm leaving. And I went and lived with the drag queens. And I lived with this drag queen named Daryl Williams. And he had one bedroom apartment. And in there must have been 10 other drag queens because he was the mother of that area. And so a lot of them could sing, really sing. They were incredible. And they would sing at night at the gay clubs. I think I'm 16 now, 17. I don't know at that time that I could protect them, but I could sure run and tell the other drag queens that something has happened to one of them. So what they did with me is they said, well, you are going to be initiated as one of us. And it was at a time you didn't pierce your ear. Well, they pierced my ear and they said, you're not just beautiful. We're going to call you Beulah, Miss Beulah. So I grew up with them until social services found out I was living there because my mother complained. After a year or so, she had social services come. And they were concerned because with drag queens, there's also trade that comes in at night. And these are sort of very masculine men that might be bisexual or fluid or curious, and they would be with the drag queens. And that's when I started experiencing, they were looking at me. And I could imagine at the time I had long hair and it was blonde and I probably looked exotic. So there was this, need and yearning to connect with me, but we did it sexually. We did it sexually. So the social services came and I was put in a group home for young youth. My goal was to become emancipated in the state of North Carolina. So that means I'm going to be on my own. But my teacher heard of this goal and objected, Doris Levy. She said, he can't go to school all day and then work a job at night and then deal with the issues that he's had to deal with growing up. His foundation is completely a mess. He needs something different. She helped me apply. I started in the high school of the performing arts. Both of my teachers were gay and they were living together, which was unheard of at that time. And they were New York gays, so they were already used to living openly. And the contrast with the Christian community outside of the university brought up issues over and over again about we're going to get them, we're going to shut that down. So anyway, I did well. My teachers really changed everything, my body, my thinking. I did that. And my teacher said, go to New York. I went to New York. I stayed at Columbia University. The interview was on Wednesday. I was there on Monday. We didn't have cell phones. We had a payphone in the hallway of the dorm. So every day I would run out, go up and down Broadway, applying to every restaurant or every place I could to get a job. And then at nighttime, I had a chair that I would sit under the phone and I would wait. And no one called, ever. So on Wednesday, I got the scholarship. I was awarded the scholarship. And I had until Friday to come up with $60 to stay at Columbia University. I had no family in New York. I didn't have any money to stay in New York. So I was walking out of the scholarship and I was going down this catwalk and there was a dancer coming up. I think he could tell that I was hungry. He said, we're going downtown to the Village to the Pink Teacup. And then he said, where are you staying? I said, at Columbia. He said, what are you doing? I'm waiting by a phone every night for a job. He said, that's not going to happen. No one's going to call you. So he said, I have a friend. So here we go with the mischievous. So he says, I have a friend. He's the manager of a gay bathhouse called the Club Baths. So I called him. He said, come now. It had a restaurant in it, pools, jacuzzis, showers, theaters, community rooms, not community rooms, and a warning light that said exit in case we're raided. Because we could be raided at that time. The bathhouse could be raided. And he offered me a job there as a towel boy. And a towel boy is the person that collects the towel when you go in the bathhouse and escorts you to your room. And hopefully they'll give you a tip. And he also gave me like a $300 advance on my pay and a Village Voice with rooms for rent to go to Brooklyn. I worked in the bathhouse at night and I danced and rehearsed in the day. I did graduate from the Alvin Ailey School, but I also got invited to dance with their repertory company. And now I'm dancing with other famous companies like Clive Thompson, Pearl Lang, and I'm touring with them. But then the politics changed and arts funding decreased. So those touring opportunities didn't happen anymore. And then my friend says, well, there's an ad in a magazine called The Advocate. And in the back of the ad, you can post a description of you to be a escort for men. And I thought, I can't do that. He said, yes, you can. You're very hypersexual. By that time, I had a partner and we lived in a penthouse. I would have 3 or 4 clients come at lunchtime because usually these are straight businessmen. I learned that I didn't like touching them. And so I would learn what they like. I would, I'd assess what they like. And then I would say, oh, you like that, the big, whatever it was. And they would immediately come and they were out the door within 20 minutes. But I would still get paid for the hour. And then they would go and then I'd have room to get ready for the next client. At that time, gay was referred to men that dress as women. That's gay. In New York, there was none of that. It was men and women who owned their own businesses and ran organizations and were moving a country. forward with what we have today, with the rights that we have and the things that we have. They created that, and they were there, and I was among them. One of my lovers that I met through escorting was Victor Hugo, who was partner with Halston, the designer. I would just talk to him dirty. He would be happy, but then he befriended me. And we started going to things and places. Chelsea Hotel. It is a hotel traditionally for artists, and a lot of gay people live there. And Victor lived there. And it would be a suite. And he would have like this 1930, 40 projector that used to have in classrooms to project your profile, where the teacher could draw out your profile. So he would project my face profile on these pictures. Then he would color it right there in the hotel, frame it, sit it near the door, call white women with lots of money, and they would come over because of his association with Halston. They would buy these pictures. They're out there somewhere in the world, all these pictures of my profile. So I did start going back to dancing, and I did well. One thing about escorting, though, a lot of times in these situations, the men have drugs. And the drug popular at that time was cocaine. And I would indulge, I would partake with them in that. And that's when it started getting dark, like seriously dark. I think I have seen everything. I was given this duet with a wonderful dancer in the Elio Pomari dance company. And I regret it to this day. We were playing Shakespeare's Damn Spot. The character is bleeding from guilt. And you have up your sleeve a little red piece of cloth. So the ending of this dance is that blood is dripping. And so I start pulling it until it covers the stage around us in blood with the fabric, red fabric. And then the lights go down. Well, the next day after that rehearsal, and I thought that was a great dance, that I was going to return to my dance career, and this is going to be my way. But that night, met this guy, went home with him, and he had cocaine, and I took it. And I took it, and I took it. So the next morning, I woke up needing to get to the airport to go on tour. I went in the mirror, and I looked at my face, and I said, it's blue. You can't show up at an airport like this. You can't do it. I never called them. I never told anyone. I kept it a secret. And I just accepted that I'd never be able to dance there again. And that started probably the beginning of the end of me dancing at that time. In 1984, the test for HIV was released. But at that time, because they were afraid that they would be attacked, so they bought a storefront or rented a storefront in New York, in the Village, and they covered it with brown paper, and you would stand outside, and then when it was your turn, you would go in, and they would take you back in a room, take the test, and tell you to come back in 2 weeks. It was packed. The room is packed with gay guys getting tested. And they called my name. I went back in the room, and they said, you have the virus that causes AIDS. And I thought, I have the virus? And he said, yes. He says, well, it's fatal. Most people die in 6 months. I think one day after using so much, I was sitting on the subway, and it was cold. It was February. It was freezing as it does. And I looked left to right at the people sitting across from them. Most of them were elders, and they were exhausted. You could see in their depleted faces that they had worked hard all their life just to exist in New York City. And I thought to myself, as an older person, that's not what I want. I finally went home for a bit. I ended up getting a job as an administrative assistant at the University of North Carolina. One night, I relapsed. I called 800 number for cocaine addiction. I was very good in the job, but now I had lost that job. But I still had the insurance. And so she said to me, we're sending a limousine to you at 6 a.m. to pick you up. We're going to take you to the airport, which could take you to our facility. And I thought, oh, this must be in a neighboring city in North Carolina. They have a facility. I was sleepy and high, right? So I fell asleep on the plane. And I guess hours later, I woke up and said, something's wrong. I must have missed a flight or got confused. She said, you're going to go to LA with us. And when you get out, there'll be a man with a sign with your name on it. And he will take you where she knew what was going on. They got me healthy again physically. And then they transported me to a group home for drug addicts or for drug therapy. And in that meeting, there was a guy. He said, would you like to go out on a date? And I thought, a date? Because I'm from New York and I'm an escort. We don't go on dates. We go on sessions. And I went with him and he took me to LA on a full moon. I dated him, fell in love with him. We moved in together in an apartment in Long Beach. And I was clean for a long, long time. He didn't teach me. He didn't tell me. He demonstrated for me what a man is supposed to do in this particular environment as a gay man. Oh, you go to work. You know, it might not be where you like, but for now, you do what you have to. I went through a number of different jobs. He never judged me when I had drug use, and he brought out the best in me. He retired from the military. And I said, what do you want to do? He said, I don't know. I'm thinking about traveling. And I said, good, let's go. So for 1 year, we sold everything we owned. Our car, we only had 2 bags when we were done. We got on a plane. We went all over the place. We lived a little bit in Puerto Rico. We went up to New York, the coast, Hawaii. It was just an incredible time with him. And when we ended up in San Francisco, I was getting tired of living in hotels. And we moved into this beautiful little apartment. It had 11 windows that looked at the Twin Peaks. He wanted more to do. So he became a flight attendant on a charter flight to different countries. Unfortunately, when he's gone, he was really my rock in terms of regulating my addiction. My addiction would go wild when he was gone. One day, the military doctor called and said, you have to stop him. Don't let him leave the country. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor said very gravely, you don't have much time to live. You have full-blown liver cancer. It's spread all over your body. She did not look at me and include me at all because we're in the military. Don't ask, don't tell. So I became his care partner. I'd walk him to the bathroom. Then I would carry him to the bathroom. Then he was too heavy to lift to the bathroom. So I had to start changing his diaper. That right there, changing his diaper, was a big trust issue. It was like I had never done that with him and I'd never gotten so close to him. So my love was different this time. It wasn't the love and I'm having sex with you. It was kind of a beginning of an awakening that love is not just pleasure and sex. This act is love. He resisted till the end to get morphine. And the doctors gave him morphine and he would be gone for periods of time. And one day I remember I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and he had not been up for months. He mustered up enough strength to lift his body up and to take his hands and hold me like this. And he said nothing. And then he slowly let the hands down and he went back into the bed and fell asleep. And I knew that that was the end coming. The end was very near. Because I didn't know how to regulate my emotions then, the only skill that I had to do a break was to go get high. I couldn't even talk, much less feel anything. I became numb. When he died, the first thing I did is I went to that closet and I went with one swoop and gathered those uniforms and removed them to the garage downstairs and left them. I don't know what, maybe I was angry at the military because our whole life in San Francisco was don't ask, don't tell. We wanted to get married when they passed the marriage law in California that you can become domestic partners. That's what we wanted to do. And we were going to go do it. And we were going to go stand on the steps of the government. And he said, I can't. Don't ask, don't tell. If I do this, I'll lose my benefits. I'll lose everything. Rent was escalating in San Francisco. But guess where I was moved to? The Tenderloin. In the middle of drugs and drag queens. there I am. So that was fun. At that time in San Francisco, you had circuit parties where they go to the club, and after the club, they go to your house. And the people that were there in my house were like a drag queen or two, a big old rich millionaire from, the dot-com area, the Silicon Valley. There was a millionaire sitting there, but you would never know because they were dressed in jeans and shirt, and they were cool. And only I knew it from other people saying, he's a millionaire. And you would have them bringing me the latest digital software that they had created and showing me how to put it on my computer. And of course, we're smoking meth when all this is going on. And then you would have people, DJs bringing me some really good mashup music, and we'd play that music. And then when you're done doing that, you get up and go to the next house. That happened until I met Carlos. If he wasn't doing meth, he was a disaster. He was very depressed. So I thought, let me take him to North Carolina. I'll introduce him to my family, and maybe that will help stir him up to feel like, we can start a relationship. So we did that. And when he came back from North Carolina, he told me, I will never stop doing meth. At the same time, my niece called and she said, Uncle Todd, her name is Jamila. She said, I'm great with child. I'm going to give birth in about 9 months. Would you consider coming here to North Carolina and taking my baby and the older one and raising them while I complete my residency at this hospital? I had left San Francisco, and it distracted me from my former life, and I had pushed everything down. But there would be episodes of uncontrollable weeping because grief has its own time. It will tell you when it's done, if it's ever done. Eventually, I came back to California. I was on the couch of my friend, and I had 3 days to get out, right? To get on my own. So I was calling the San Diego ads for rooms, and there was one ad. And I called the ad, and the woman said, and I still know her today, she called and said, yeah, we have a room. Come down right now. And I said, but I don't have the security. I just have the first month's rent. She said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. You don't have to pay anything. And when you can pay, you can pay us. And I didn't realize it. But I moved in, and it was one small room with one bed, and you step out of that bed and you're at the sink, and you had to share the shower with the rest of the residents. And I never did that. I got a gym membership and would go to the gym. And I thought to myself, I have to get out of here. And I found out later in hindsight that was a program called Alpha Project. And they had, without me knowing how, it connected me to what I needed. And I remember every day leaving that place and thinking, I'm going to go look for other opportunities and another apartment. And I would walk out, and the men that lived in that place, they were so shut down, and I'm sure they had addiction problems. They would just sit in their beach chairs out in front of the building and smoke all day. And that was what they did. But I didn't. I went and I would see a building and I would walk around it and said, I'm going to live in that building. And people would say to me, no, you're not. It's an affordable housing building and it takes an 8-year wait list. And I was in it in 1 year. This is the new beginning, right? And it was New Year's Eve, and I was very sad. And I was like, I don't want to be alone on New Year's Eve. So I got online and I started scrolling through one of these gay men sites, and I created a profile. And I was looking, and this picture came up. So I said, would you like to go out on New Year's Eve? He said, no, but I'd like to invite you over to my place. I said, sure. I stayed there for 4 days, talking. And we're still talking to this day. And when I went home, I sat down on my bed and I thought, I need to go get him. I said, would you be interested in going on a journey with me? And he thought, and he said, yeah. He left everything. He brought his bag, he moved in, and we began a life together. We're still together to this day. one of the things that was healing for me being in a relationship with him, because I still wasn't well. I wasn't using, but I still was dealing with the emotion. Meth really destroys your ability. It ends up in three places: death, institutions, or jail. I don't know how I navigated all through that without having those experiences, but near death experiences. He was a clown in his mother's circus, and he has this Mexican humor, and he knows how to flip things. And that alone, that emotional infusion just raises my vibration, which makes me healthy. It may have been difficult for us pitted against what we were pitted against, but I know that the world is different now in so many ways. When I was young, I asked an older person, what would you say to a younger person about aging? And she said, just keep moving, keep going, keep stepping, just go through it. Whatever you're going through, don't give up. Just go, keep going. Because I can tell you in the end, it gets better and better. One thing about dance, it's important to be in the moment. You only can dance in the instant. Even when you do a pre-made, you need to bring life to it in that moment. That's why the audience looks at it and goes, what is that? It's because I got out of the way and the muse came down inside my body and moved me. And if it moves me, particularly with emotion, it will evoke an emotion from the audience. Clearly, I've walked through death over and over and over again. I only knew what I'd learned from dance was the internal work. And the deeper I went inside was really a place where I could lay the foundation for my own inner peace. And in finding that inner peace, it's brought me to this beautiful place where today I have a purpose, I have meaningful work. I work with seniors and Alzheimer's with dementia. I collaborate with dance theaters. I work with young choreographers and young dancers as well as old. I have one last thing to say. I have been loved through all of it.
When he was young, he danced so free. When others laughed, he wouldn't flee. He found his love, his gentle light, yet fate then dimmed his joy from sight. When he was young, he danced so free. When others laughed, he wouldn't flee. He found his love, his gentle light, yet fate then dimmed his joy from sight.
He drowned his grief in drugs and wine, yet deep within a spark would shine. From ashes rose his dancing grace, now hope and love fill up his space. He drowned his grief in drugs and wine, yet deep within a spark would shine. From ashes rose his dancing grace, now hope and love fill up his space.